evening and welcome everyone in the first webinar, which is called Leadership Series under the aegis of Atal Bihari Vajpayee Centre for Leadership Policy and Governance at IIM Ranchi. And as all of you know that today's topic is business growth is a shadow of a Black Swan event, the COVID crisis. So nothing can be more relevant than this topic, and nobody can replace the leaders we have who have joined the first webinar in the leadership series. So to begin with, I'll introduce my colleague, Professor Nitin Singh. Professor Nitin Singh is basically faculty in the area of operations management as well as information system and business analytics. He had affiliation with IIM Ranchi, his fourth IIM, starting with his PhD from IIM Bangalore, so that IIM Indore, IIM Kashipur, and now at IIM Ranchi. But equally, he has served in the industries, starting from KPMG, Hexaware, GE Capital, and HPCL. And that brought the linkages between Professor Nitin Singh and Linde India, and who was instrumental in getting these two leaders. So I request Professor Nitin Singh to introduce the theme of the webinar so that everybody are on the same plane. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Singhal. Thank you for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Balakrishnan. Good afternoon, Mr. Abhijit Banerjee. Good afternoon, Director Sir, Dr. Singh. And good afternoon to all the participants in this particular event. I will actually organize my discussion around 4 issues which are connected with the theme today. We may call it points or we may call it issues. I was gathering my thoughts around it, and I thought there are 4 things which actually intervene on this theme. First is this issue of an event which is of high consequence but low probability. So this kind of an event has very high impact on the businesses, impact on the economy, but such event has very low probabilities of happening. And so because of that, statistically speaking, it's very difficult to predict as to when it will happen. So people say, the economists and the people working on this area of uncertainty, they say that such events will happen and definitely will happen. So it is not a question of if, it is a question of when it is going to hit you. That is the challenge. That is first. Second thing, which actually characterizes such events, is the issue of outlier. In the area of data analytics and statistics, people do talk of outliers, but we talk of outliers from different perspectives, whether it is 95%, it is 95% significance level, 97.5% significance level. These outliers are really, really outliers, way beyond into the tail. So it has a very low probability, and that's the second characteristic. The third characteristic, or the third issue, and I will not call it an issue, I'll actually come to the question of the business. So if there are such events, and if there are such outliers, it's a pandemic, and it affects the businesses. Most importantly, it affects the lives of people. It threatens the lives of people. We lose our near and dear ones. That's a fatal consequence. That's a very high impact consequence. But beyond that, it also affects the businesses, it also affects the organizations, and it also affects the way we do business. So from that perspective, the issue of the business continuity planning, it's a fairly standard practice in most of the organizations which come under the impact, which come under the ambit of risk assurance. business continuity planning is basically, there's a team, there's a department which basically ensures that the business continues as usual. If there is an impact, then we ensure that the businesses don't affect. But this BCP planning, this BCP of business continuity planning, is actually on the operational side. If the generator fails, then do we have a substitute? We plan for a contingency. If there is a failure in the lift, do we have a contingency plan? These are operational plans. And most of the BCP plans are around these operational measures. They don't do planning for these activities, for these events. High consequence, low probability. But such events require scenario planning. There's a company called Shell which actually talked about it, and they were the ones who really went too deep. They made elaborate plans and frameworks around scenario planning because they were in that kind of a business, which is into the business of supplies. And in today's context and the discussion that we are having, and incidentally, it's happened that we have business leaders who are in the business of supply. It's basically a case of supply. Industrial gases, oil and gas, petroleum. So the supply lines have to be connected. If there is even a single break in the supply line, the destination runs dry. So even when we have a business which actually thrives on supply connectivity and supply lines being maintained, when we have an event like this, which actually stops the supply line, what happens? The borders were sealed, people were not allowed to travel, the material was not allowed to go from there. It's a complete lockdown. The borders are sealed. So what implications it has on the business which thrives on supplies? So that's a extremely critical juncture and a critical context in which we are having this discussion. And that's why I thought we should have this conversation, then we can have a stalwart like Mr. Balakrishnan and also a president like Mr. Banerjee talk on that. And I think this will be more of an interactive discussion. So I leave the desk open. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Nitin, for setting the tone and giving the background, because sometimes the title does not mean for many of us like me. So thank you very much for introducing the theme. Now I'll come and it's a real honor for me to introduce three pillars to our external experts. Mr. Arun Balakrishnan, who is Independent Director of Linde, India. Then I'll introduce Mr. Abhijit, Banerjee-Managing Director of Linde, India. And then I'll come to our Director, Dr. Shailendra Singh. So let me give a little introduction of Mr. Balakrishnan. He serves as a non-executive independent director at Linde India Limited since 2011. He is B Chemical from College of Engineering, Thrissur, Kerala, and has a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Bangalore. So I think all students and others connected with science will be able to relate, corporate and management both. And Mr. Balakrishnan has over 37 years of experience. Very importantly, he is a council member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India and on board of 11 other companies. That speaks about his contribution, his experience. In his past career, he was also a director on the board of Mahanagar Gas Limited, SPCL Mittal Energy Limited, NCDEX Markets Limited, Linde India Limited, then the Shipping Corporation India Limited, Rashtriya Market Services Private Limited. In addition to that, Mr. Arun has also been appointed as Honorary Chairman of Institute of Directors, Bangalore. Another thing I think I should not forget to mention that he had received Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2018 from IIM Bangalore. So equally recognized by academics and corporate world. Then it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Abhijit Banerjee, who is Managing Director at Linde India Limited. And Mr. Banerjee has been serving as the Managing Director Linde India Limited from 2019. Previously, he was working as a Vice President, Tonnage Accounts Management, Linde India Limited, and he graduated from IIT Kharagpur. And he has also worked with Shaw Wallace Company Limited. Now coming to our director, because it's not only that people from IIM are connected, we have many guests who are outside IIM, but they are valuable to us. So I would also take this opportunity to introduce our director, Dr. Professor Shailendra Singh. He's PhD from IIT Kanpur with more than 33 years of experience, and he's a very balanced academician as well as administrator. His parent organization, or I should say that he has worked with IIM Lucknow for about 20 years, and still he is there as a professor and had also served as a dean. And as an administrator, I'll just speak for one line, many of you might be aware of, that NIRF ranking is considered to be one of the major indicators of measuring the quality of the institution. And in deciding the quality of the institution, role of leader is always very important. So in 2019, IIM Ranchi was ranked 28, and 2020 came to 20th rank. And we hope to keep moving ahead in terms of ranking with the guidance of Professor Singh. So with this brief background about all three of you, two experts and our director, now I'll request our director, sir, to introduce about Atal Bihari Vajpayee Centre on Leadership Policy and Governance at IIM.
Thank you, Rekhaji. Let me first welcome the two distinguished industry leaders, Sri Arun Balakrishnan ji and Abhijit Banerjee Saab. Let me also recollect my past association with Arun Balakrishnan Saab. He has been kind enough to address my students at IIM Lucknow on leadership and emotional intelligence. We also had members with a program of emotional intelligence learning and joined together emotional intelligence leader Daniel Goldman in one of the conferences, and he had given us a lot of leadership and had also given lot of support when I was with IIM Lucknow in terms of MDP and other activities that we were associated with HPCL and IIM Lucknow. I also welcome Sri Abhijit Banerjee and India. Thank you, sir, for coming to and addressing us and our students. Your motivational speeches will go a long way in opening the horizons of our colleagues and students. Let me just briefly introduce what we do at Atal Bihari Vajpayee Centre for Leadership, Policy and Governance. First, this sector was opened on 20th August 2018 when Honorable Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, what is called heavenly abode. The Jharkhand state as it exists was established in the tenure of Honorable Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. So keeping the state existence during his tenure, it was the rightful tribute to the statesman. At the center, we are currently doing policy level research, debates, and webinars, seminars, and ultimately we want to develop ourselves as a think tank organization on leadership, policy, and governance. And in due course of time, we will also be having what is called 2-year full-time program on public administration and leadership. So these are the programs that we have in mind. Currently, in the days of pandemic, we have taken up this activity of connecting with policy makers, connecting with leaders, and thank Nitinji, with whose good offices we have been able to rope in Abhijit and Arun Balakrishnan, and we are looking forward to your talk, so I will not stand between the speakers and the audience who are looking forward to listen to Abhijit and Arun Balakrishnan. Thank you.
For giving background about the center and its activities and welcoming the experts. Now, before inviting Mr. Banerjee to begin the webinar, I'll just announce for the participants little bit the rules which we try to follow. Though this webinar is going to be very interactive, some of the questions even we will be posing from here. But I'll request you that unless you find when some question you can't hold, it directly relates to the issue which is being discussed. You can ask in between also, but please ask your questions through the chat box, and I'll keep on facilitating. I'll be putting your questions to Mr. Banerjee and Mr. Balakrishnan. So we will begin with Mr. Banerjee, and will also not leave Mr. Balakrishnan because we would not like to leave his expertise to be shared with everybody, including us. So with this, I'll request Mr. Banerjee to begin the webinar.
Thank you, ma'am. Professor Shailendra Singh, Professor Rekha Singhal, ma'am, Professor Nitin Singh, Mr. Balakrishnan. It's actually indeed an honor for me to have been invited to speak at this webinar. A special thanks to Arun for having suggested my name. There is a personal connect that I have with Ranchi. I did my schooling at Ranchi, spent possibly the 10 best years of my life over there. And I'll be honest, when this invitation came in, so I just went into Google Maps to find out where exactly Ranchi is. And then I realized it's not too far away from a favorite picnic spot of ours, Tagore Hills, not far away from Morbadi grounds, where we used to go for Dasara, Durga Pujas. So yeah, there is a personal connect. I'm very happy that I was invited for this. So I would like to give an introduction to us. It's in a couple of phases. Linde is the world's largest company as far as industrial gases is concerned. And industrial gases actually touches us in ways and means far more than one would normally realize. Just to give an example, this particular webinar that we are holding would have been in a different shape or a different, let's say, mode altogether, if not for the helium that is going into the fiber optic manufacturing, which is helping the broadband connectivity. If it were not for liquid hydrogen and argon, which are going into the manufacturing of satellites. Just a couple of ballpark numbers, more than 90% of the steel production in the world is based on oxygen, has to be done with oxygen. You cannot make stainless steel without argon. Recently we've shifted over to BS6 as a clean fuel. BS6 fuels cannot be made without hydrogen, and so on. I looked at our archives and came across a short video on the gases part of it, couple of minutes. So I would request Bala if you could just show that, and then I'll continue with my presentation. Thanks. So this was actually touching upon some of the exotic use of gases, and of course, the most important use of gas that we came across over the last 6 months of the pandemic, which is use of oxygen as a medical, possibly the main means of treatment for this particular pandemic was not covered, but definitely I'll come to that. So Bala, can you just bring up the presentation? Yeah. So this is a brief introduction to Linde. Next slide, please, Bala. So Linde India is 75% owned by Linde PLC, which is the world's largest industrial gases and engineering company. Linde PLC was formed in 2018 with a merger of Linde AG, which is based in Germany, and Praxair Incorporated, which is operating out of the US. And it was a merger of equals, as we say, and it created the world's largest gases and engineering company, which logged a turnover of about $28 billion last year, which is around 2 lakh crores of rupees, and has a market capitalization of $135 billion. We call ourselves to be a chemical company. We come under that segment. So it is one of the largest chemical companies from a market cap position, except for a couple of petrochemical units. It's possibly the largest chemical company. Thank you, Bala. And of course, this was sort of. Sorry, I think I lost my video. So.
No, sir, you are visible, sir.
So this was. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So this was actually touching upon some of the exotic use of gases, and of course, the most important use of gas that we came across over the last 6 months of the pandemic, which is use of oxygen as a medical, possibly the main means of treatment for this particular pandemic, was not covered, but definitely I'll come to that. So, Bala, can you just bring up the presentation? Yeah. So this is a brief introduction to Linde. Next slide, please, Bala. So, Linde India is 75% owned by Linde PLC, which is the world's largest industrial gases and engineering company. Linde PLC was formed in 2018 with a merger of Linde AG, which is based in Germany, and Praxair Incorporated, which is operating out of the US. And it was a merger of equals, as we say, and it created the world's largest gases and engineering company, which clocked a turnover of about $28 billion last year, which is around 2 lakh crores of rupees, and has a market capitalization of $135 billion. We call ourselves to be a chemical company. We come under that segment. So it is one of the largest chemical companies from a market cap position, except for a couple of petrochemical units. It's possibly the largest chemical company in the world. We have more than 2 million customers operating out of more than 100 countries with 80,000 employees. As you can see, 6,500 plus patents. So obviously, research and development and innovation is something that is in our DNA. And we are also trying to put in our bit as far as charity, sponsorship, community is concerned. Next slide, please. Just a brief background. Linde AG and Praxair Incorporated actually, while they merged, the Linde PLC was formed in 2018. The history goes back to 1879 when Professor Carl von Linde in Germany, Bavaria, Germany, founded his company for ice making. There's a very honorable cause for that, if I may just digress a bit. The brewers in Bavaria had a problem of their beer going bad in the months of summer. And Professor Linde created this technology for ensuring that the beer could be preserved. So I'm sure there are a lot of people in this webinar who would be eternally grateful to Professor Linde for that. Subsequently, in 1885, he was the first person to liquefy atmospheric air, and which is the basis of which the cryogenic gas industry was created. Then sometime in 1907, he had formed a company in US, but then due to the First World War, the interests of that company had to be surrendered to an American company. And then subsequently, after a long time, after almost 100 years, in 2018, the two companies merged, and now, I mean, they re-merged sort of a thing. They started from the same mother company and then came back and founded this company called Linde PLC. Next slide, please. Globally, as I mentioned, we are operating in more than 100 countries. So if you see the map of the world, except for some countries in central part of Africa and some countries in the western part of Asia, we have a dominant footprint all across the rest of the world. And there are a couple of small pie charts below which show that out of the 28 billion sales, the Americas have around 40%. EMEA, as we call it, Europe, Middle East, and Africa have around 24%. APAC, which is Asia Pacific, that's Asia going down to Australia, New Zealand, has around 21%. And then we also have a very strong engineering group, and we have some other services. Industry segment wise, we cater to a very large industry base. Manufacturing being one of the largest, metals and glass, also chemicals and energy, we are there. Healthcare is definitely something which we take a pride in being a part of it, and of course we had huge challenges over the last some months. Next slide, please. As I was introduced, I'm the Managing Director of Linde India Limited. It's an 85-year-old company which was founded in 1935 when British Oxygen Company had set up its Indian subsidiary, the Indian Oxygen and Acetylene Company Private Limited. It's gone through various avatars. From a private limited company, it became a public limited company. Then it was renamed as IOL Limited in 1995, renamed as BOC India Limited. In 2006, when the Linde Group took over BOC, our ownership changed and Linde became our main promoters. Though we retained the branding of BOC for some time because it was such a strong brand, it was only in 2013 that we renamed ourselves as Linde India Limited. And of course, as mentioning, in 2018, Linde PLC was formed. 2019, the operations of the merged company of Linde and Praxair started. And in India, earlier this year, we formed a joint venture with Praxair India. I'll cover that subsequently. I think we'll be talking about the merger in the Q&A session. Next slide, please. I hope it's a bit visible. We have various industry segments. The first one, more than 50% of our revenue comes from the on-site segment, where we set up plants on build, own, operate basis for large customers, including Tata Steel, Jindal Stainless, Steel Authority of India Limited. This is a highly capital-intensive segment where we put in the investment and then serve these customers through long-term 15-year, 20-year contracts. Coming down is our bulk segment, which is where we supply liquid products to customers. You would have seen our tankers on the roads applying liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid argon. We have more than 1,000 customers, and there's a robust distribution system supporting this business. Going back above, the PGP, which is the packaged gas segment, is where we are actually supplying to customers whose volume requirements are a bit on the lower side compared to the bulk or, of course, compared to the on-site. These are done through cylinders. We have more than 150,000 cylinders in circulation. And we have, in the next slide I'll show you, we have a coverage all across the country for this. Under the PGP section, we also have a special products where we supply helium, special gases, very high purity gases, calibration gases, gases like silane, which get into manufacturing of solar panels, LCD screens, etc. Healthcare, of course, is, as I was mentioning, a very important business of ours. We supply medical oxygen to government and private hospitals across the country. On an average, we do around 200 tons of medical oxygen, which of course went by more than double in the months of September and October when the pandemic reached its peak. We also have what we call the PED, the Project Engineering Division, which sets up plants. We have certain customers who would like to own the plants, so we sell plants to them, and of course PED installs plants which we also ourselves operate to supply gases to our customers. On the next slide, please. So this is just an overall snapshot of Linde India. On the map, you see several circles. The blue ones represent our cryogenic ASU sites. As you can see, a lot of them in the east, some in the west, in the south also, and one in the north. And the red ones are the packaged gas filling stations where we fill up our cylinders, which also has a spread more or less across the whole country. So in summary, we have 13 cryogenic air separation units in operation, 11 packaged gas filling units. We have these small on-site plants, what we call single customer, single product units, 10 of them are operating. We have more than 400 tankers and trucks on the road, doing more than 2 million kilometers per month, ensuring that the product reaches the customers, whether it's a liquid customer being served through tankers or a cylinder customers being served through trucks. 150,000 cylinders, as I mentioned, more than 1,500 customers. And overall in India and in the rest, some parts of Asia, our project team has set up more than 100 cryogenic plants across India and mainly South Asia. So that was just to give a brief about the business that Linde India is in. Now, I think Professor Singhal can start.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you very much. With a very good background, because by the name of Linde India, we never realized that your presence is in more than 100 countries. And you supply more than 20,000 gases, so it's a huge, huge amount. But before we go to the issues related to COVID, could you tell us something about the role in Indian economy? Because such a huge organization, so many products, almost all sectors, the industries you touch. So what's the contribution or role in Indian economy in India? Some idea, will you say?
Well, I wouldn't like to give any numbers per se, but for example, we're talking about the steel industry. Most of the steel industry is served, almost the entire steel industry is served by us, either in terms of we owning and operating oxygen plants which are supplying gases to them, as I mentioned, oxygen and nitrogen and argon. And some of the customers who would prefer to have their own plants, our project engineering division supplies them. On the refinery sector, we set up oxygen plants for the petrochemical units. We supply hydrogen plants. Linde has hydrogen plants which are used in the refineries, as I was mentioning, for cleaning up fuels and for other process applications. Manufacturing, for example, we are very strong in the manufacturing sector, especially in the automobile, because our argon is used for all the critical welding that is needed for white goods manufacturing, for automobile manufacturing. We play a significant role over there. And going forward, you would have noticed there is a lot of interest coming up in sustainability. Linde has a huge commitment towards sustainability. And there is a substantial movement that we are seeing in terms of the Indian corporates also looking at things like green hydrogen and with various uses for mobility or for other applications. And we are definitely working with them to ensure that the world's best technologies are made available to the Indian sector.
That's we can understand that the quantum and the contribution, almost all the sectors you are touching directly or indirectly. I would like to take you back the merger of equals you mentioned, and that term is really fascinating, merger of equals. If I'm not wrong, in fact, Linde India, Linde and Praxair both were number 2 or 3, a very high ranking in the world. So, why this merger has taken place and what are the challenges you faced, because it happened in 2020. So that was otherwise also very challenging phase in terms of any industry. So will you share something interesting which is not available anywhere in the site for our participants?
Yeah. So, ma'am, before the merger, Linde AG was the world's second largest gas company, the largest being Air Liquide at that point of time, operating out of France, based in France. And Praxair was fourth largest. Praxair was very strong in the US and also in some specific geographies like in India and Brazil and Russia. Linde was very strong in the Europe market and also in Asia Pacific. So we had a lot of sort of putting these two companies together would have ensured, was one of the drivers, was that the portfolio would have been complete across the globe by putting these two companies together. There were some, let's say, overlaps also, because of which certain divestments had to be done in Europe, also in US. Then also the core competencies of these companies. Linde is a company which is recognized for its technical excellence, its innovation, its engineering, whereas Praxair is modeled in terms of operational excellence, is acknowledged across the world. So by putting these two companies together, it was a beautiful combination of technology and operational excellence coming together. So from all these aspects, it was, sort of when the merger was mooted, the question that came to people's mind that why so late, why not earlier?
Yeah, exactly.
And merger of equals was specifically something that the boards of the managements of both the companies wanted to highlight, that look, this is not a takeover of Linde by Praxair or Praxair by Linde. It's a true merger. It happened through exchange of shares. The management committee has an equal representation from both the companies. And what is interesting is, of course, Praxair was exceedingly happy to change their name from Praxair to Linde, because it was sort of a ghar wapasi for them. As I was mentioning, they were also formed by Professor von Linde, Carl von Linde, so it was sort of ghar wapasi for them also.
Okay.
So, but now it's no longer we and them, it's now us.
Okay, excellent.
Now, coming to the merger, while globally the entire merger was completed by 2019 after certain divestments as mandated by the various competition authorities in various geographies. In India, the competition authority approved our merger. We did have to go through a painful process of some divestments. Both Praxair India and Linde India had to sell off some of their businesses. In India, Linde India and Praxair India were sort of equally sized with sort of overlapping, let's say, competencies and all. There were some complications in terms of the ownership structure, Praxair India being a 100% owned subsidiary, Linde India being a 75% owned subsidiary. So there were a bit of complications, but the value that was evident to both of the managements of the Indian subsidiary entities in terms of merging the operations was very clear. So we, after a couple of attempts at various other options, we finally decided and went in for creating a joint venture with Praxair India, which I had shown in my slide. So the operations and management of the businesses of both these companies are being done by the joint venture, which is called Linde South Asia Services. This was approved and brought into place just the day before the pandemic was, the lockdown started. So yeah, from a timing perspective, it was a very tough decision to take. Arun, who's over here and has been our friend, philosopher, guide, critic, everything on the board, was, of course, we faced, the timing was most unfortunate to have done it at that point of time. But I'm happy to say that the groundwork that we kicked off some months before that ensured that it was a very seamless transition, and it was done in phases, and we were successful without any glitches whatsoever. None of our customers had any concerns arising out of these developments, so that was pretty successful.
That's great, because a lot of preparation and phases, and that shows the strategy of merger. Even just before the lockdown, your business is not affected, customers are not affected, and that's really great. That shows how the company is supported by people like you. But I was curious to know, who's your competitor then? If merger of equal to biggest in the world got together, who's your competitor?
Ma'am, as I was mentioning, globally, Air Liquide, which was the world's largest, is now the second largest. They're pretty big even now. There's Air Products based out of the US. And because of the divestments that took place resulting of the Linde Praxair merger, there were some companies, some of the businesses, for example, Praxair's business in Europe had to be sort of sold off lock, stock and barrel. Similarly, a substantial chunk of Linde's business in US had to be sold off. So as a result of that, the competition authorities across the globe ensured that it's not a monopoly which came up. So it's just that there were certain relatively smaller players who are now in the similar league, may not be the same league, but a similar league as the rest. There is a Japanese company which took over a substantial part of the divestment bids. Even in India, for example, it was coincidental to some extent that both the divestments of Praxair India and Linde India were bought over by a Japanese company, Airwater, who had a relatively small presence in India through a joint venture company, majority shareholding in an Indian operations, and now they are pretty of a considerable size because of the divestments that we had to go through. So I think the market will never allow a monopoly, and the statutory authorities are there to ensure that there is no monopoly. And I'll be honest with you, ma'am, monopoly doesn't really work. Leadership works for sure, but monopoly...
Yes, that's true, that's true. Very correct, very correct. It's the leadership who takes any organization or industry ahead of others, not the monopoly. That's very true. I don't know, again, I'm going back somewhere related to your merger. And do you think that because of this lockdown, the second quarter economy, whether it got affected or not? How did you cope up with that? Because competitors, customer, economy, all these pillars are equally important. So how did you cope up in the second quarter in terms of economy?
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks. And you have possibly highlighted one of the most painful parts of my career. We are a B2B company, and we are, as you could guess, we are a sort of an enabler to other industries. So anything that happens to the economy, which happens to these industries, obviously gets reflected in what happens to us. So to just give you some small examples, in the month of, starting from, of course, the fourth week of March and going down to the first week of April, the volumes that we sell in terms of the liquid products as well as the cylinder filled products that we sell, it dropped down to about 30% of what it was in the months of January and February. So a drop of 70%.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of our customers just had to stop operations. Luckily, it was recognized by the government, both the central government as well as the state governments, that industrial gases is one of the critical industries which needs to operate. So there were no sanctions on our operating except for, of course, the regular requirements, and which we ourselves also imposed. I can talk about that later. And so we remained on the roads, we remained manufacturing. There were some of our plants which were dedicated to one customer, which obviously had to be shut down because the customer was down. But then as and when the lockdowns started getting relaxed, our numbers again started picking up. And to some extent, actually, our numbers in October, if you see the overall volume sold, was much higher than what we had sold in January and February. But that's, of course, because of the extraordinary demand in medical oxygen. As I was mentioning, what we were doing around 200 tons per day across the country shot to more than 400 tons per day, which had its own set of huge challenges. So But subsequently now we see that, let's say November had been relatively stable. We are now back to pre-COVID, to some extent, in certain cases slightly higher than pre-COVID. There's still a couple of our customers who have not come back to pre-COVID levels, but overall from a business perspective, yeah, it was 6 months of an incredible dip in business volumes and then picking up.
Yeah. A lot of
course, that came along with, sorry?
A lot of challenges I can understand, or we can understand.
Yeah, ma'am. Challenges were not just in ensuring that our plants are operated. First of all, we had to ensure that our employees are kept safe. So we had to put in a lot of measures. Luckily, because of Linde having a strong presence in China, all the learnings of China from January onwards were percolating down to us, and from February itself we had realized. Obviously, we never imagined in the months of February or the beginning of March of what's going to happen, the magnitude of what's going to happen. But we had some ideas about what should be done. We put in a crisis management team, which was initially we were meeting on a daily basis, putting together plans to ensure that our employees are kept safe. That was priority number one. Number two is to ensure business continuity. And number three is, of course, how to meet this sudden spurt in demand in terms of medical oxygen.
Yeah. So it's very true that in a challenging situation, along with the employees, you have to prioritize your business priorities as well. I know I had a huge list of questions, but I'm seeing at the watch clock also, it's moving so fast that I'm skipping some of the economy and business related questions. And I think I wanted to know, rather we wanted to know something between Linde and COVID, but you have already mentioned because of the oxygen supply, the Linde and the COVID were interconnected. So one way COVID had impacted your business, but at the same time the demand of oxygen also increased manyfold. And then would you like to elaborate something on that?
Sure, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, what happened was initially during the lockdown, when the lockdown first started, our medical oxygen volumes fell down because a lot of hospitals decided to postpone all the non-emergency operations and all. So actually the oxygen volumes came down in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's only when the pandemic really hit in its full swing, then we had a terrible situation where in some hospitals, the demand shot up to 10 times what the normal demand was. That put a huge challenge in terms of the installations we had put. There were huge safety concerns around whether our equipment will be able to handle that huge volume. So we had to augment our facilities in several hospitals. We had to augment and strengthen our distribution team so that the tankers could be there on time. On several nights, in Linde, because of safety practices, we don't allow driving at night. But under these circumstances, every day, the approval for driving at night has to come given by me. Even the head of our distribution can't do that. Every night, I was approving several tanker movements across the country. Several occasions had happened when we were actually monitoring the liquid oxygen level in a tank of a hospital going down, 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 and trying to measure understand from the GPS fitted on our tanker when it's going to reach. I'm happy to say that none of our medical customers ever had what we call a stock out position.
Great.
It was incredible work done by our operations team, our distribution team. And not only that, the government came to us and we actually had to, they set up several new wards for COVID, and we were obviously the partner of choice for them. We had to set up these new installations overnight. We broke several records in that time in setting up our facilities. So
admiring, really. I don't know, I'm becoming a little selfish. I know I'm not eligible for that, but I can ask on behalf of my students. Are there any employment opportunities for our students in Linde?
That's a very, very interesting question. And just incidentally, just a couple of hours ago, one of your ex-students sent me a message. Sir, I heard that you're going to give a presentation to my alma mater Thank you very much. So there. We do have a program where we recruit people coming out of engineering colleges and management institutions. We call it the Catalyst program. It's called Career Advancement Through Accelerated Learning for Young Stars of Tomorrow. I'll be honest with you, over the last some years, we've not been visiting campuses of the IIMs or the IITs because we sort of believe the recruitment we do would like to be slightly on the longer term. And myself being an IITian, I know, I mean, the IIT IIM group is a bit fickle in mind. They have a lot of ambitions, and we may not be the most attractive employees for them. We are a very stable, solid company grounded in the business we do. We have superb job opportunities, but we may not be the flashiest of employers that one would come across. But sure, I mean, definitely developing a proper talent pool is of vital importance to us.
Yeah, so I'm sure that some of Ranchi students who would be keen to serve such an organization, Professor, we will be in touch, and certainly you'll give us some preference to our students. But again, coming back to the business part, working in a multinational organization and business in a multinational organization, how challenging it is. Because though you have a Linde India, but you're part of such a huge group, so how much challenge it poses as an organization or as a director?
Ma'am, I mean, definitely being a part of a multinational has huge advantages in terms of the technology base, in terms of resources, everything. But definitely, we are not just a multinational, we are also a listed company. And so we have a lot of obligations to our non-multinational shareholders, the minority shareholders as we call them, who own 25% of our shares. So there are a lot of requirements, and I would say who better than Mr. Arun Balakrishnan to sort of talk about the challenges of operating a listed company. I wouldn't use the word challenges, sorry. I don't want to use it in that sense of the term. But definitely there are several requirements, and we are very eager to ensure that those requirements are met. And we have a set of fantastic independent directors who do not hesitate from rapping us on the knuckles when they feel that we may not be doing it the way they feel it should be done.
Yeah, so you have connected me to Mr. Arun Balakrishnan, and I don't want to leave him because it's already 5:26. And for many of us, including me, sometimes we're not clear what's the role of independent director and what's the role of managing director. So can I ask Mr. Balakrishnan, could you throw some light? What's your role as an independent director? I just had the impression that you chair several committees, but that may be true or that may be wrong. But it will be great learning, which takes years to understand the role of independent director. So will you throw some light on that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Audio is, yeah. Your audio is not very clear. Some issue with audio. Maybe we'll request you to disconnect and connect, and in between, if any participant has a question, can put in the chat box. So probably, yeah, let us check again. Your audio, is it clear? So will you speak? Could you get my question? The role of independent director and how it is different from.
Yeah, you are coming very loud and clear.
There's a Can you just try logging out and logging in, perhaps? That may
that will help. And in between, any participant has any question can put in the chat box so that I can ask to Mr. Banerjee by that time. Yeah, Mr. Balakrishnan, maybe you log out and log in again, and then your voice will become clear. Yeah. And anybody has a question in the chat box?
The question can be both for both.
Question can be for both Mr. Banerjee as well as for anybody because we have almost reached to the time. So any question? I know Mr. Banerjee was so clear and that everything now we could understand the role of India, business, contribution, connection with COVID, challenges, how teams work, how leadership worked. So all those issues have been answered very clearly. So I'm not finding, yes, participants, any question before Mr. Arun Balakrishnan again joins us back. Any special challenges that Linde expects in times ahead? So we have got a question, maybe Mr. Balakrishnan are back. So, sir, will you try to respond to that question?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, my question was that your role as an independent director, because generally we don't differentiate or we do not understand what's the role of independent director and what's the role of managing director. So could you please share with us, which takes years for us to learn what's the role of independent director?
Yeah. See, there are 3 or 4 different types of directors there. One is the functional directors. And the functional directors include the managing director, the finance director, the production director, and things like that. Okay. The second type of directors is that they are non-executive directors, but not independent. They are like, if you take a loan from a bank, the bank will have a director in the company to take care of them. And the third type of director is the independent director. Okay. Now, independent director came about because somewhere about 20 years ago in the 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of fraud across the world, especially in UK and USA. So they felt that the promoters were taking the small shareholders for a ride. And they started instituting a number of measures to bring in proper governance so that the small shareholder is not given a bad deal. Okay? That is how the concept of an independent director. It is actually non-executive independent director. And one of the conditions you have there, which has been stipulated for being an independent director, is that we should have no relationship with the company other than as an appointment as an independent director, and the only pecuniary relationship is getting a sitting fee and a commission. That is all. I can't be a consultant. I can't have any relative in the company. I can't be trading in their shares that easily. I have to declare very much in advance. So we are actually watching the company at a distance to make sure the company is following the governance standards, and that is the key. Okay. So in India, this rule has come in with originally there was with the Companies Act. It was already there, but later SEBI, all of you are familiar with SEBI. SEBI said every listed company should have independent directors, and also large public limited companies with a turnover of about 200 crores or so. Okay, so this became a very large kind of thing, and the role of an independent director is something very onerous. We are held responsible by the government and by the promoter for a number of areas. Like if there is a problem, if the promoters have cheated, like if you open the newspaper today, DHFL or in a whole range of companies are there who are continuously cheating the customer. They ask independent director, what were you doing? And one of the issues that come up is that, okay, why did you stop that kind of cheating? Okay? And in addition to that, there's some of the banks who have been cheated, they file a case against independent directors saying, look, we are going to take that money which we lost from your personal account. So, I mean, so it is a very onerous kind of position which is there. And
it's a kind of third eye on the organization. You are part of the organization, but you're not. You are more critical on the entire process.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Now,
there's
another role.
Yeah.
To make sure that the governance is right. Okay. The independent directors are normally the chairman of all the committees in the board. Like there is a board of directors, okay, which is a large setup. Under that, there are a couple of committees which are very critical. The most important of that is audit committee.
Okay.
Audit committee is responsible for ensuring that the processes in the company are actually robust. Okay. So audit committee chairman is a very, very responsible position. Okay. He is the one who deals with the internal auditor. Actually, the internal auditor reports to him, and also the statutory auditor also reports to him. Okay. So it is a very key thing. And the financial statements of the company for every quarter has to be approved by the audit committee, and they have to recommend it to the board. Only then the board can approve the financial statements. Okay. Then there are other committees like, a nomination remuneration committee, which will make sure that the people in the organization are paid well so that we are able to retain talent in the company. Okay. Then there is a stockholders relations committee, which ensures that the dividends declared or annual reports and all the information are always transferred onto the shareholders at the appropriate time. These are broadly, of course, then there is a CSR committee, which is quite popular these days, because government has said that 2% of the profits go to CSR. So there is a CSR committee that is also, in every committee there has to be a independent director. And audit committee and nomination remuneration committee and the stakeholders committee has to be chaired by an independent director. So this is what an independent director is, and they get paid a very attractive sitting fee as well.
Thank you so much. And this we cannot get from any book. This is a great learning for all of us. Otherwise, we can't learn, and it might be years to work in an industry or corporate sector to understand the role of independent director. Thank you so much, Mr. Balakrishnan. And I know we have already exceeded the time. And see, there are two questions there. The second one is, how will pandemic likely to impact the digital transformation journey for Linde? So, any one of you can answer.
Abhijit should answer.
Yes. I'll take that one, ma'am.
This question.
So yeah, I mean, actually, we embarked on our digitalization journey some couple of years back. But definitely, one can say these have been baby steps so far. But sure, the pandemic, the resulting work from home, which is now a part of our lives. I mean, I came to the office today after 3 weeks, I think. And it's going to go on for at least some months to come. This gives a huge opportunity for digitalization to sort of step in and, of course, in the overall scheme of affairs, improve our efficiencies and our productivity. Just purely pandemic-related stuff, I can just give you a small example. We had taken in a couple of our sites, one was a plant which had to go in for a major maintenance, another way we do a manufacturing. We went in for a digitalization tool using infrared cameras and normal CCTV cameras to identify things like where people are herding together, where people are not wearing masks. So these would get alerts, and we found that we're very successful, and we've decided to sort of roll it out across the other sites. So yeah, this is from a digitalization perspective, I would say the pandemic is a great boon for ensuring that proper emphasis is done on developing as much of tools as possible, which would not just be related to handling the pandemic, but would actually end up giving a huge amount of value in terms of making our processes more efficient.
Yeah, so I think with this, I'll say this was the last question because we have to respect time, and both of you have a very important task. But
maybe we can Maybe we can extend it by around 15 minutes or so if there are interesting questions coming up. And I think Abhijit and I may not have any problem on that.
I'm okay till 6, Arun. Madam, if I'm okay for that, if that works for others.
Yeah, so I don't know, I see in the chat box there was another question. Any special challenges that Linde expects in times ahead? There's another question in the chat box.
Yeah, I mean, just to take a cue from what Professor Nitin Singh had started in mentioned while starting the program, was talking about scenario planning. One of the committees that we have in the board is the Risk Management Committee, and Mr. Balakrishnan is heading that. So I'll be very honest, from a management perspective, we had never considered a pandemic to be a scenarios we have to plan for. We've planned for various things, our plants breaking down, earthquakes, the whole works, but pandemic, no. So any surprises awaiting? That's a difficult one to answer. All that I can say is based on our learnings over the last 8-9 months. Surprises can be there at any point of time. It's how soon and how well you can react to them and ensure that you're able to sort of mitigate any negatives out of that is which will help us pull through any surprises coming up. There could be some good surprises coming up. For example, if the Pfizer vaccine is what is going to be the final one, then we in Linde, we believe that the normal vaccines that are normally used, for example, what AstraZeneca is doing, that can be sort of met by the normal supply chain. But if it's something like these RNA-based vaccines which need -70, -20, it could be a great opportunity for us in Linde.
Yeah, I can see that. In every situation, you are prepared for opportunity and to serve the customer.
Yes, but definitely. But at the same time, one of our values is to uphold our responsibilities to the community, to the society. So that is something never shy away from.
If I can add a word or two on the subject, there is no company without challenges, and the challenges increase with the sophistication the world is getting in terms of technology and supply chain, etc. So if there was no challenges, there were no surprises, I don't think we would need a management team as competent as Mr. Banerjee for that. It is for this very reason that we have very competent people. As I see it, as we go along, the challenge would be, what shall I say, balancing efficiency versus resilience. Okay. Now, what is efficiency? Efficiency is look at how do you run your supply chain at the least cost. Okay. In doing it, you have 1 or 2 suppliers and 1 or 2 transporters bringing you and taking your products for that matter. Okay. Whereas resilience means you should have a major supplier plus probably 5 other suppliers in case a major supplier fails. Okay. That is where resiliency comes in. But if you have too much of resiliency, your costs go up. So the issue of a good management is that how do you balance resilience with efficiency? And I think that is a lesson that most companies have learned. That is, those companies which I am associated with, we have learned this particular thing, how to balance between these two. Okay, so this is another.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, you have aptly, in fact, I'll say summarize the value of management, dealing with challenges and surprises, dealing with efficiency and resilience, and that really speaks about your management and managerial skills. Because otherwise there's no test or there's no, you can't enhance your management. It's so great. I think with this, I don't find any question in the chat box. So before I hand over Professor Nitin Singh for official Thanksgiving, at my own personal level, I'm really grateful to get connected with you, get interacted with you, and interaction with both of you has really worked as an appetizer. I know many people, those who have joined today, those who could not join, certainly are going to visit the website of Linde India because that has acted as an appetizer. And certainly they'll look for some more information and will educate themselves. So Before I request Professor Nitin Singh, indeed, a lot of thanks to both of you, and it's an honor for me for interacting with people like you. So, Professor Nitin Singh.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. So, I think I was just observing the conversation. We are in a stage we have not really crossed the band. I think this pandemic, we don't see the end of the tunnel at the moment, though we do see some indications. And the conversations and the discussions that we had with Mr. Balakrishnan and Mr. Banerjee, we could see that, we could actually chart out the path, the road that they had traversed since this pandemic began. But we do see that, I think we are not crossed the band. We are still in the process of crossing the band. So the challenges are still there, and the challenges, of course, they also bring opportunities because they are the literal image of each other. And I think this is a sensitive matter, and we all are responsible towards our society, towards our community, towards the family. This is definitely a threat to us. But I think it also brings out a way in which we manage our businesses and manage our lives in a different manner. So with that, I must express the vote of thanks. So I extend my thanks to Mr. Balakrishnan, who was actually the mentor and the kind of an angel of this particular discussion. And we hope that we continue to have this conversation and interactions in the future. I must thank Mr. Abhijit Banerjee, who is the anchor, not the anchor, who basically the entire conversation is anchoring around him. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, also telling us about the way you actually crossed this particular pandemic, and also mentioning about the merger and acquisition discussion. Thank you, Mr. Banerjee, and I hope to stay in touch and we hope to continue the collaboration going forward. I must thank Dr. Shailen Singh, the director of the institute. Thank you for gracing the occasion, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and sharing your views at the vantage point of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Centre for Leadership. I must thank Dr. Rekha Singh, my colleague, who has been so kind enough to be here. Thank you, Dr. Lastly, and least, I must thank all the participants. They are the real flavor of this webinar. I must thank you all for your active participation, for being patiently listening, and I hope you have been benefited in a way. And I'm sure that we will continue to interact with you. I must thank the team from the Atal Bihari Centre, Dr. Arun, Dr. Abhijit, Ranchi, and the others who are involved in this entire process. And thank you to the IT administrator, Mr. Balakrishnan. So with that, I would like to...
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks a lot. It was really a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.